guys, I'm Kristen Howerton. I blog at Rage Against the Minivan.
I'm Elizabeth Esther from elizabethesther.com.
And we are going to be talking about religion. We're going to be doing a little episodic webcast on religion. My personal background is that I grew up evangelical, and I would now consider myself a post-evangelical.
I grew up evangelical fundamentalist, and now I am Catholic.
So between the two of us, we have kind of a wide range of religious experience and background, and we want to take a time, hopefully each week, if not maybe a little more, but we want to take a little time to periodically have a look at what the interweb is talking about when it comes to faith and religion in our culture, because we think it's just interesting. I mean, I know both of us are interested in religion. I know that it can be a topic that is highly contested online, and I feel like we were able to hold a good balance of peace when we talked about politics, even though we come from different places. So we're going to try doing the same thing when it comes to faith. So Elizabeth, what was the big brouhaha on the internet this week in terms of religion and Christianity?
Well, I think you kicked things off with the Mark Driscoll post. Basically, he tweeted on the inauguration day, and just kind of led to a big response to that. You wrote something.
Well, I actually wrote about it before.
Oh, that's right.
But I will say, my writing about it was really linking to other people writing about it. So it did not start with me. I can't.
It all starts with you, Kristen. You are the alpha and omega of blogging.
Driscoll Gate. But I do think it really came to a head on Inauguration Day.
Yes.
When he
tweeted about our president taking an oath on a Bible he doesn't know, to a God he doesn't believe in.
Likely doesn't believe in.
Because, yeah, likely.
So a lot of people were enraged.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that word, enraged. That was my feeling by that tweet. What were your thoughts? I mean, you didn't vote for Obama, so what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't vote for Obama, but I was so proud to call him my president on that day. And I do believe Obama's a Christian, if only because that's what he says he is. He has said it so explicitly. I think he lives his life that way. Yeah. He cares about his faith. And I don't think that Christians should be in the business of saying who is and who is not a Christian, especially if they say they are.
Yeah.
Someone who's clearly not and says they are not, well, we believe them. So it's just hard for me when someone, will say you're not a Christian because I don't agree with what you do, or your beliefs don't all line up exactly the same.
Right.
He has very clearly said Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior.
Right.
Which is about as explicit as it can get, I think.
Yeah.
So I felt like it was a very uncharitable, to put it lightly, uncharitable thing to say, especially on Inauguration Day. And it was very disrespectful, I felt, to our president.
I completely agree. There was a huge backlash. I saw, a lot of people kind of speaking up. I mean, I feel like Mark Driscoll, if you're not familiar with him, he's a pastor in Seattle. He pastors a very large church. He's a very kind of alpha male pastor. He curses, and yet he is also very strict about certain things. And he loves to go on Twitter and say outlandish things that he then never responds to. And this was just one of a variety of things he has said online that have been offensive. And most of the time, a couple of people will respond, but this time I saw a lot of Christian leaders responding. I know I saw Carlos Whitaker saying he was frustrated. Sean King went off. I said, I tweeted something to the effect of, and my intention was really just to poke fun at what he'd said and how ridiculous it was. So I said something like, well, I'm praying for Mark Driscoll that he can come to resemble the Jesus Christ, who was in the Bible, or something to that effect. And people came at me.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah. It was interesting. Came at me, why are you Driscoll bashing? Why are you bullying him?
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's just so interesting. I've had the same thing where people are saying to me, why are you questioning what he does? If he is a servant of the Lord, he is bringing people to Christ. And, by you speaking critically of him, you're speaking against a servant of the Lord. And he's not accountable to you. He's not accountable to the blogosphere. He's not accountable to Twitter. And I just think that's such a false dichotomy because as Christians, we are accountable to each other. The scripture is very clear, be subject one to another. He's not any better or higher than the rest of us. And yes, he is accountable to the Holy Spirit, but he is also accountable for the words that he places in a public forum that other Christians are a part of, that perhaps his congregation or other Christians from other denominations are reading. And we do have a responsibility, I think, to say that's not Christian, that's not appropriate, it's not charitable, and it's not loving.
Yeah. I mean, I tend to agree with you, but I definitely saw a split in the blogosphere this week as people were kind of mulling over the backlash against Driscoll. There came a backlash against the backlash against Driscoll. There was a post by a gal named Laura on Deeper Church, and I know you read that one where she was really saying, you know what, Driscoll's not my pastor, so it's not my problem. I don't really need to respond to it. I just need to dig into my own home church community and pay attention to what's going there. And I don't need to be concerned with what this other guy is doing or that he's not representing me well because he doesn't represent me. Which I know you had some thoughts on.
Well, first of all, I thought it was... that part's just a little bit intellectually dishonest because the church that she does attend was part of an Acts 29 network of churches, which Mark Driscoll helped co-found the Acts 29 network. So for her to say he's not my pastor, well, maybe not directly, but he certainly was involved in establishing that network.
I mean, let me throw this to you because you're Catholic. I mean, do you feel like you need to respond when there's something really inappropriate coming out of the Catholic Church? Do you feel like as a Catholic you should speak up publicly and say, right?
Yeah, I absolutely
So I don't totally get the whole this isn't my pastor, especially if it's within your denomination.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
No, I would absolutely feel that would be my responsibility and not to remain silent. And I think it isn't unfair to say if someone is behaving in an abusive way, well, that's not happening in my house. I mean, we wouldn't even do that in real life. If we knew next door that our neighbor was abusing their child, well, that's not my child. That's not my situation. I'm not going to be a part of it. That that sort of reasoning doesn't even hold water in real life. I don't know why we wouldn't extend that same thing to in our churches. If we know that abuse is happening, then we should not stand by quietly and say, oh, well, it's not my problem, it's not my church, I'm just going to focus on my safe little thing. I can say that sort of mentality is exactly what contributed to the spiritual abuse I experienced growing up, when people said, well, that's not really going on in my family, and,
Not my denomination, it's this over here.
Right.
Yeah, and then on the flip side, even if we weren't going as dramatic as abuse, I kind of feel like when somebody is being rude in the name of Christ, when they're a really public figure, just as I said, if something happened in the Catholic Church, knowing you're Catholic, I'd probably kind of be looking like, what's Elizabeth going to say?
You would.
What? Yeah. How is she? What's her take on this? I want to know what a real Catholic, is thinking, and not just, what's going on with maybe the leadership or the loudmouths on TV. And in the same way, I feel like non-Christians hear stuff like, Mr. Driscoll, because he's out there, he's on Barbara Walters. He's really, got a huge presence on Twitter, and I feel like people are looking to me, maybe. Yeah. Not me in general, obviously.
Your non-Christian friends or your other friends.
But looking to their Christian friends to say,
go, what's going on with that?
What's up with this? And so to me, I feel like I feel responsible to defend the name of Christ and be like, no.
Right.
That is not, no.
That's not okay. Right, not exactly. And the thing is, people have to understand, people say this on my blog all the time, well, but there are so many differences between evangelicals and fundamentalists. And I'm like, look, the outside world, or people who are not Christians at all, they don't look at us as like all different kinds. They're like, whoa, what is going on with the Christians? Yeah. Right? So we're Christian, we're all one. Yeah. And they're not, and if I'm like, oh, well, that's not part of my family, that's like the weird Christians. No, we're like, we have some funky family members. And we need, if I have something going on in my family, I'm going to address it and speak out about it, even if it's not in my direct, exact household.
Yeah, and then I think, I've had a lot of people, after I wrote a post where I was critical of Mark Driscoll, I had a lot of people saying, this is the reason that people go away from Christianity is because there's so much infighting, where I would disagree. No. I actually don't consider it to be infighting when we're, calling out poor behavior. Infighting to me is like me and you quibbling over whether there's predestination. Right. Or, not being able to get along because we're not sure how often communion should be served, or at what point salvation occurs, and whether you need water baptism or not. To me, yes, that's quibbling that is sometimes, happens online. People get crazy about that stuff, and that's not attractive. I think, on the other hand, when you have Christians who are calling out other Christians for poor behavior, what I would consider to be objectively poor behavior. Yes. Not doctrinal differences, but being a jackass,
being unkind, being rude, being disrespectful, being
then to me, I don't know. And I actually, if there are any non-Christians that have actually gotten this far into the video, good for you. But I would be curious to hear your thoughts. I mean, is this really turning you off when a Christian says, stop behaving like a jerk.
Right.
You don't represent me.
Yes.
Because I have had, on the converse, a lot of people say to me, I appreciate when you say that, and I've tried to write Christians off, but when you say this stuff, then it makes me think maybe some are okay.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I absolutely, and an example would be, I really love reading feminist literature and having those discussions, and I actually appreciate it when there's a lot of pushback and criticism going on within feminist circles, because it means we are policing ourselves, we are exercising critical thought, we're pushing back on the idea, we're not like, oh, let's all make sure we look good for everybody else who's watching.
Right.
I actually find that to be attractive, that there's a lot of talk and dialogue and discussion going on, and that we can still do it while treating each other kindly, and maybe we disagree on some things, but we can still be friendly and kind.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I will totally own that I have said snarky things about Mark Driscoll, for sure. I've used sarcasm, but that I also use sarcasm when I talk about my children and myself. And the person who has received the most snark from me in my life is me. So that, there is a little bit of a
equal opportunity sarcasm.
But at the same time, I don't think I'm being cruel to Mark Driscoll.
No.
I think I'm saying, no, you don't represent me, and here are the concerns I have. And if yes, my tone perhaps is snarky, but I don't feel like I am.
Here's the thing,
on a witch hunt for that guy.
And this is huge, because people will often say, well, if your tone was just a little gentler and kinder, and if you just were so sweet, and if you could just moderate. Now, here's the thing I've noticed. When women use a snarky or declarative tone to their statements, they are called shrill. They are called irrational. They are called emotional. But when a man can speak as strongly and clearly and like Mark Driscoll, he's just being a man. He has conviction. And furthermore,
he tells it like it is. Yeah.
And furthermore, there is really no right way sometimes to say something. So sometimes we need to just listen for the message of it, and the message itself is cruel, then I'm going to call it the message. And sometimes the response, I have no other way sometimes than just be like, that was so wrong! And if someone's going to be like, your tone.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was curious when I, tweeted something back at Mark Driscoll that I was praying for him to look more like Christ. I had a lot of people come at me, and it was funny because I just kept saying, okay, I hear you. Now, are you going to go ahead and address Driscoll's first tweet that I was mocking and call him out?
No, they're going to go after
But no.
They go after.
They did not go after him.
I know, I think
so
it's interesting.
I was held to a different standard from him,
Double
apparently.
standard.
But the difference, too, is, I also engage with people on Twitter, so I don't put something out there that might be a little snarky and then walk away and be like, done,
You mean you have dialogue?
Yeah.
Oh, fancy
As
that.
opposed to, which I feel like is a whole other irresponsibility and narcissistic way to engage in social media, is just to lay these little bombs out there and then just
watch it
drop the
explode
mic
and walk away. Yeah.
Totally.
Well, also, it's just not a way to lead. I mean, and we know as moms, if we just do that, drop the bomb on the kids and then walk away, how do you, that's not how you lead. That's not how you shepherd.
No.
You have to be in relationship and you have to talk and engage in dialogue.
I think the whole, this whole week has just been an interesting week for me, and just thinking through this whole, what do you do when you feel the need to call out a religious leader? And, it has been interesting to see people really squirming about, this idea that we could possibly call someone out, I think it makes Christians really uncomfortable.
Yeah, it does.
I think, there's...
And some people are naturally non-confrontational personality types. And you know
what?
And that's that is fine. God bless you, and go in peace and do your work of peacemaking and making everybody happy. And that we need those people. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you know what? Also, God has also given other people who have voices and who see things or have had experiences and can say, hey, you know what? I've seen that happen, and I know how this works out, and this is going in a bad direction. And you know what? The peacemakers and the non-confrontational people need us as well. So for them to say to us, well, you should just be quiet and get on and just trust the Lord to take care of it. Well, God didn't give me this voice to just like sit quietly and be like, okay, wherever we're going is great. Let's go off the cliff together. Some of us need to say like, hey, we're on the wrong road.
Yeah, and I thought it's been interesting, some of the spiritual shaming that's been occurring for speaking up. You know, it's like, well, you're not being very grace-filled, which, you know, sometimes I think confrontation is warranted. And if that means you're not being grace-filled, which what does that really mean anyway? I mean, I'm not taking... Grace refers to someone's salvation, I think.
Right.
And I'm not denying that to Mark Driscoll. But, you know, you're not being very grace-filled, which to me I hear as you shouldn't confront people.
Well, they're just using Christianese to silence you. It's just another way of saying you should be quiet.
Yeah.
By saying you're not being gracious. You're, you know, and it's just another way of saying don't say anything.
Yeah. Or, well, you should, you know, follow the Matthew verses about how you confront someone. Well, you know, that was a really different time.
And also he's doing it publicly.
He's doing it publicly.
So it's not like it happened within the privacy. I mean, he's doing it in a public forum in front of millions of people.
Yeah.
If somebody did that in front of millions of people, there would be like, take the microwave phone away from that guy.
Yeah. But yeah, it's been interesting to kind of feel like I'm getting a hand slap from the better Christians for the way that I respond to something I feel is inappropriate. So.
And it's one thing to disagree. Like, fine, you can disagree. But to understand, like, but on top of the spiritual shaming, it's interesting because we are not, like, we don't have mega churches.
Right.
Like, we are not. So, like, I don't know why people are so upset with that. It's not like we can actually go in there and, like, bring Mark Driscoll down single-handedly, you know? So, I don't know why it's, like, we're a threat somehow.
Well, and, I mean, I will say on my part, do I think Mark Driscoll's reading anything I've written? No. This is not about me calling out Mark Driscoll.
Right.
That's a literary device for me to say to people who are looking to me, as I mentioned, to go, are you Christians, you know, are you guys down with this?
Exactly.
For me to say, no. You know, so, I mean, the point is not that I'm, you know, calling Driscoll to task. I mean, we all know he wouldn't listen to me anyway because I'm a woman. I don't have any spiritual authority.
I do not permit you to tweet.
Totally.
In my churches.
Well, which was super funny because I actually did get into it with a gal on Twitter, and she really kept coming after me, and I'm like, all right, I hear you. Now go ahead to say the same thing to Mark Driscoll, because she kept saying, like, this is what's wrong, and everything she said was exactly what he had done. And okay, I hear you. I duly noted. Go ahead over there.
Right.
She wouldn't do it, and you know,
because it's easier, I think.
Well, but I think it's
to take us. Like to bring us down a peg.
But I also think if she's in that church, like, women aren't really allowed to take men to task.
No.
Right?
Oh, of course not.
So I don't know. Maybe she came after me.
We're just a bunch of shrews, Kristen. We are a shrill, irrational,
and we're
emotional.
bullies. We're also bullies.
Oh, we're right.
I know Mark Driscoll's probably crying in the corner about the blog.
You know what we need to? There needs to be like a definition of terms, like what is a bully, what is grace, like yeah.
To me, a bully would be more like someone who, I don't know, like said something derogatory about worship leaders looking effeminate. That, to me, would be like a bully. Like,
true. Especially if that person holds a lot of authority and power over people. Right. And also if that person gets their living from those people.
Right.
Yes, that's what we call, it's called a balanced difference of power.
Anyway, that was, you know, God this week. The backlash against Mark Driscoll acting like an ass. So we're curious to hear your thoughts. Do you agree that sometimes speaking up is warranted? Do you think Elizabeth and I should be quiet? Are we being ungraceful or bullying? We'd love to hear your take.